So, like in many topics, Heather, it can be helpful when we think about how something impacts not just us, but people around us. So, talk a little bit through that lens of emotional intelligence. In what ways does our emotional intelligence impact people around us positively or negatively?
Mm-hmm.
Or a
Yeah.
lack of emotional intelligence? Maybe we could put it that way.
Yeah. So this is a great question. And I think it goes a lot to the self-awareness piece of this model, or of having a higher level of emotional intelligence, is just recognizing that what I have going on in my life is going to show up in what I do and what I say to the people around me. In the same way that you can think of it almost like reciprocal interaction, is that when we see somebody, especially somebody that we're familiar with, when we see them with kind of a frown on their face or a sad face, we will have a tendency to mimic that face or mimic that emotion. And I think that to a certain extent, emotions tend to be kind of contagious that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people that we're around all the time, right? If somebody in your home comes home and they're in a bad mood, you can almost like clockwork see how long it takes for that mood to then trickle through the entire family, and then everybody else is in rare form, right? Whereas then the same thing happens if somebody comes home and they're excited or happy about something, then that becomes contagious and spreads. And so just even having that level of awareness to say that if I have something going on internally with me that I'm processing some kind of feelings, then how am I going to not only use that information, but also communicate that information to the people that I'm around? And so I know that for me, I have a tendency just with my personality type to, when I am in a funk about something, I go in my head, but yet you can still tell by my expressions or my lack of...
She does this a lot.
And my lack of communication,
Yeah.
and so but then my husband will say, "Are you okay? Are we okay? Did I do something?" And it's like, nope, sorry. I'm just in my head. I had this other thing happen. And so I'm just processing that. But even just being able to recognize that, okay, I'm in a funk about something, but I don't necessarily want this to, trickle down to all the people that I'm around. So how am I going to responsibly manage my emotions, take responsibility for my emotions, and do my best to make sure that it's not going to land on the people around me?
And I will say this, we were working together for 6 years, and you do that consistently even here at work. Well, you will say, hey, I'm in a funk right now. I don't really know why. So if I come off that way, just know it's not towards you. That's just, I've got something going on. And we're all just like, okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, whatever. I'm glad she's working from home today. No, but I think that's totally true. And I think one of the other arenas is parenting. I think of just my kids, like my lack of emotional intelligence can spew right out onto them. I remember listening to Kurt Thompson was on a podcast called Dadville, and he was talking about this, that specifically a dad, a father, when he walks into a room can completely change the emotional dynamic based on his mood and he was even talking about it at like a biological neuroscientific level. And I think that that's something that we need to consider, that our limitations are going to affect the people in our lives, specifically our kids. I remember growing up, I saw my dad cry one time. And if you were to look at my life, I cry a lot less than I bet everyone else does. There are days where I wish I could cry. It's actually most days. I wish I could cry, but I have a really hard time with it. And I think
I
a
could
lot
try
of that.
to help you with that.
Okay, cool. I'm going to scoot this way. Okay, so I feel threatened. But I think that was a learned behavior, though, that I didn't see it in my house. I saw it from my mom, so it felt like something that was feminine, but I didn't see it from my dad, so I didn't feel like it was something that was masculine. And so I think that our kids pick up on that stuff. So to be aware that our emotional intelligence or lack thereof can really impact them and their trajectory as kids.
Yeah, we talk about it in Heather's session at our conferences about mirror neurons, that we've got that part of our brain that I'm picking up from you, how I should act and behave, especially with those that I trust I'm in relationship with. And I think that's a humbling, challenging part of life, parenting especially, but really any marriage or relationship, close friendship, is like, I am part of creating the environment around me, whether I intend to or not. And if we see that our behaviors are byproducts of our thoughts and feelings, those deeper things, then I'm always impacting others by my either emotional intelligence or lack thereof. And I think parenting is a great example. Prior to my Pure Desire journey, I know that I would get busy and overwhelmed, and I'd get short with my kids, or critical or sarcastic, and I would just excuse it to, well, I'm really busy. But I've learned that, well, it's not just busyness. There's usually a fear that's creating my overwhelmed feeling, either a fear of failure, fear of not being ready, fear of not being good enough, that now drives the anxiety I'm feeling and pushes it onto other people. And being able to recognize it, and like you've talked about, Heather, at times say to my kids, like, I'm sorry for the way I treated you, because it wasn't about you, and it's not just that I was busy. It's that I'm worried about this, and I'm letting that worry kind of consume me, and it's making me react in ways that are not very positive. Well, I could never do that before. It's like, well, I'm busy. What do you expect? Like, leave me alone. And almost justifies bad behavior because of my circumstances. And yet it was never truly the circumstances. It was always the emotions underneath it. So I just think that's an invitation here, is the healthier I get in terms of emotional intelligence, the better I'm going to get at relationships. And I'm not saying that perfection is the goal or performance is the goal in relationship, but I think we all want healthy relationships. And that's a byproduct, in my opinion, of emotional intelligence.
Yep.